So when Rishi Sunak called the election, I did that thing that the Germans probably have a word for, when I sort of thought to myself, well, I can't see much sense in this. This looks absolutely bonkers. What on earth is the lad playing at? But he must have a plan. I think the best example of what I'm describing came about at the beginning of COVID, didn't it? When we talked a lot about some of the decisions that Boris Johnson was taking, and we could see no rhyme or reason whatsoever. We could not see any rhyme or reason whatsoever. And Dominic Cummings, of course, who was the power behind the throne, he still had that reputation for being some sort of evil genius, which I don't think in retrospect he deserved at all. But at the time, we all thought he was a kind of like the Mekon out of the Dan Dare novel, comics. And he was, so there must be some secret massive master plan going on, but we're too dopey to see it. We're too slow to see it. Of course, there was no master plan. It subsequently emerged, largely due to the testimony of Dominic Cummings when he turned upon his former protege, Boris Johnson, and hell hath no fury like a senior advisor scorned. And so there was no master plan. And that is where I am again now. I don't think there was a master plan, but I can't help thinking that there must have been a plan of some sort. He didn't wake up that morning, did he? Or go to bed the night before and just sort of have a chat with his wife and say, hey, I've got a good idea. I'll call an election in the morning. I think Macron did, by the way. I think Emmanuel Macron should have slept for at least one more night on his decision to call an election over in France, because that's beginning to look like a miscalculation on a scale that makes Rishi Sunak look sensible. We could be wrong. We'll find out shortly after the election here, what has happened in France, where the far right really are on the march. But the idea that Sunak was acting with a plan, or even just a sort of mitigation of risk, is one that I can't shake.
I've got a theory that this is much more to do with Graham Brady and his letters that may have been going in to depose Rishi Sunak. And I know that it's pure speculation.
Everything's pure speculation today, mate. No problem with that.
And I just think that you speak as though it was a pure controlled decision by Rishi Sunak, potentially, but I don't think it was. And I think I was speaking to producer, and I know that Graham Brady is never going to say, X number of letters were going in. But
he talks to the Prime Minister about how fraught that situation may be, because, these are, I think, the reasons why Truss walks the plank, or why, with Boris Johnson, it was an avalanche of very public resignations. Pretty much everybody in his government was resigning in public by the end. But certainly the Prime Minister will be given the lie of the land by the chairman of the 1922 committee. And who here could say that the Conservative Party in its current iteration isn't mad enough to have tried to get rid of another leader before the general election?
Well, I use the word dysfunctional. They are utterly and entirely...
That's very polite.
Yeah. Well, takes one to know one.
Yes.
And none of it has been thought through or strategized. I think... I was saying to my partner yesterday, look at some of the decisions that have been made by Sunak's team, like during the general election campaign. None of it speaks to grand strategy or clever thinking, but it does speak to people who are, to be fair to them, and this is me being really generous, people who are under immense pressure.
Yes.
And when people are under immense pressure, they make very poor decisions. Like, take D-Day. You can list whatever, however many things you want to list.
And that would include calling the election, would it?
Yeah, because if you look at not more than the optics, but
I like this.
How would it look to the country if the Conservative Party then went through another leadership election when they have the deadline of January 2025 to have a general election? What
Disney film contains a principle to which you are unwittingly subscribing?
I'm terrible at Disney films, James.
It's Frozen.
You know what? I was saying to someone yesterday, I've never seen Frozen.
You must see Frozen. It's a beautiful film. But the troll principle which Dan in Torquay has reminded me of, is that people make bad decisions when they're mad or scared or stressed.
Yeah.
And Dan goes on, I think Sunak has been living in a mad, and evidenced on recent TV appearances, scared. There must be a deep fear that needs to be contained, controlled when running a country, and stressed. Anyone dealing with the Tories' dysfunction at the moment would be stressed, although he didn't use the word dysfunction. Since he took office, he's used to controlling spreadsheets and not leading people. He's baked. And so there you go, the troll principle of frozen. Or, to give John in Weston-super-Mare his dues, the jump before he was pushed principle. He thought that they were gathering, that they were gathering behind him. So he got out.
I think Sunak's had a very bad toothache for a long time.
Yes.
And he's unwilling to go to the dentist. And then push came to shove, and it was like, let's rip this out. Yeah,
well, I've had that message from a friend. Indeed, why put off the inevitable? Get it over with. Rip off the plaster. Get on with it and move on. 23 minutes after 10 is the time, which is perilously close to my hunch, which I think everyone's guessed anyway, so I don't know why I was trying to build up any tension about that, but I'll carry on. In for a penny, in for a pound. I'm not telling you what my hunch is, not yet.
I think he just thought the only element of advantage he had left was surprise.
Yeah.
So by going early, he was hoping to keep Labour on the wrong foot. But the problem is his party seemed to be surprised and wrong-footed by his decision as well. And, you haven't got much else to do in opposition than prepare for an election. So, Labour were ready.
I mean, if that was the plan, then it was an absolutely disastrous miscalculation, wasn't it? Because he seemed to annoy his own party much more than he wrong-footed the Labour Party.
Yes, but I think he felt like it was all... I mean, the polls were going a certain way. I mean, he knew the inflation numbers, so it would be one of his... Was it 5 promises he had?
Yes, and he thought he'd be able to dance around a bit more on that, do more of a lap of honour, and hope that everybody forgot to point out that when inflation rocketed, he claimed it had nothing to do with him.
Quite right, yeah. And I think I read somewhere also that they think the inflation might go back up again in August, in the autumn for a bit, and then come back down. So he might have been sort of worried about that too, and that sort of final plank being removed.
With a couple of exceptions, it's almost as if everything could be true today, couldn't it? All of these things could be contributing factors to a momentum that eventually pushed him over the line. It's unlikely. It's not going to be a single thing, but if they're sitting around the table and somebody says, reform, and somebody else says, and also we'll take Labour by surprise. And so slowly the enthusiasm for the idea begins to build.
If I'm right about this, it's the first time I support Rishi Sunak, the first and only time.
Go on.
I'm the one who lost faith in him 2 minutes into his first speech outside Downing Street, when immediately after the integrity, professionalism, accountability, he started praising Boris Johnson. That was it for me.
Fair enough.
He just resigned from his cabinet, for God's sake. Anyway, the thing is that after Boris Johnson left, they put Rishi up against the village idiot, and
that's a little unkind. But I mean, for people who need subtitles, you're talking about Liz Truss.
Absolutely,
yes.
And I'm not sorry I said that.
Carry on.
And, it was pretty obvious to most people that 6,000, white Conservative members of the Conservative Party were going to vote for her and not him. And that's exactly what happened. Since then, since he became Prime Minister, he's been very badly treated, at least in my view, by the Conservatives. And we know how petulant he can be.
We do now. We didn't before, did we? But we certainly do now.
No, we didn't. We do now. And I don't know what happened, but something's just snapped. He knew they were going to lose anyway, and he's just said, look, basically, I can't say the word I want to say, but,
enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Yeah, enough is enough.
So
I've had enough. I've had enough of you. Sort this out for yourselves.
He liked the job, but not the party. In other words, the party, he feels let down by the party, which would have begun when he had the first setback of his life, which of course was losing to Liz Truss. The first time in his life, really, as Beth Rigby on Sky News, I think, pointed out, that he just has no relationship or familiarity with failure. So those seeds there would be sown, and then the subsequent treatment that he received from the Parliamentary Conservative Party, as opposed to the broader membership, has slowly sort of coalesced into a deep dislike of his own party, or disdain for. I like it, Mike.
Was more furious with him when he called this election than his own party.